Hi everyone, let's go ahead and get started with our Module 8 review. I'm going to go ahead and go by task. So here we're going to start with task 1. So on this first one, we're going to be given a graph and we're going to find the exponential growth or decay, y-intercept, the range, and the end behavior for each one. Now on graph A, I've gone ahead and drawn a dashed line right on the x-axis. The reason for that is because the x-axis is where y equals 0. So whenever we look at one of our exponential graphs, we're going to be looking at it from left to right. And as it goes from left to right, we're trying to see if it's getting closer to where y equals 0 or further away from that point. Okay? So this graph is getting closer to it. When it gets closer to where y equals 0, that is exponential decay. And then that means that B is going to be between 0 and 1, which is a decay value. Now the other thing we want to look for is the y-intercept. The y-intercept is where does the graph cross the y-axis? And that is at 0, -3. Or you could write A equals -3. The next piece, we're going to see if this is y is the graph less than 0 or is y greater than 0 when we're looking for the range. Because it's below where y equals 0, all the y values are negative numbers. So this is where y is less than 0. Okay? And the last piece is the end behavior. Since we're reading it left to right, I want to know the end behavior of the right side of the graph. So the right side of the graph is going right towards positive infinity, and it's going up, but it's only going as close to 0 as it can without touching 0. All right, so let's go to graph B. On graph B, this graph from left to right is getting closer to where y equals 0. So since it's getting closer to it, that is a decay. Whenever we have a decay, the B value is going to be between 0 and 1. The y-intercept is at 0, 3, or A equals 3. Sorry about that. And then when we're talking about the range, is y greater than 0 or is y less than 0? So when I'm looking at this graph here, y is actually greater than 0 this time because it is above the x-axis. And then the last thing, looking at this, where is it going? It's going right towards positive infinity, and it's going down closer and closer to 0. All right, let's go to graph C. On this one here, this graph from left to right is getting away from the x-axis, so that means that this one is a growth. It's a negative growth, but it's still a growth just because the right side is getting away from 0. So this is when B is greater than 1. Let's see, what else do we have? The y-intercept. The y-intercept is at 0, -3. And then the range, because it's below where y equals 0, then it is where y is less than 0. The graph is y is less than 0. Okay. Now this right end of the graph, it's going right towards positive infinity, and it's going down forever and ever towards negative infinity. Okay. All right. I'm going to leave graph there, graph D there for one for you to try, and let's go on to task 2. So on task 2, we are taking an equation. We are trying to determine whether it's exponential growth or decay, find the y-intercept, find the percent rate of change, and then is B greater than 1, is B between 0 and 1, or is B less than 1? And we've talked about this in class. B can never be less than 1. B will always be greater than 1 or between 0 and 1. So let's look at equation A. Right, so this one here, I have y equals -2.5. So that's my A value. Oops. Let me grab a pencil. A equals -2.5. The B value is what's inside the parentheses. So if I'm looking for all of B, it would be 1.6. If I'm looking for just the R value, R is 0.6, or you could write that as 60% if it asks you for it in percentage form. And lastly, because B is 1.6, it is more than 1. This one is a growth. Okay? All right, so let's go ahead and look at equation B. On this one, A is our y-intercept, so it's 200. B is everything that's in the parentheses. So the B value, 1 minus 0.43, is 0.57. The R value is 0.43 or 43 hundredths, which is also 43%. Because our B value is between 0 and 1, this one is a decay. Okay, question C. Our A value, or the y-intercept, is 75. B is 1.35. The rate itself is 35 hundredths, or we can write that as 35%. And since B is more than 1, this one is a growth. All right, I'm going to leave D there for you to try one. And now I'm going to go on to task 3. Now on task 3, I've given a graph, and we have to write an exponential equation. So we're going to need to find the y-intercept and a common ratio. So we're going to need 2 points for these ones. So always look on the y-intercept first to find your first point. The first point for this one is 0.8. Now let's see if we can find a point at 1. So at 1, we have 132. Now if you cannot find one at 1, I would go look at -1. Okay, but that one's going to be an estimation. So I prefer not to use -1. And I know that 1 is right at 32. It's a good point. So I'm going to go ahead and use that. Now with those 2 points, we're trying to find what are they multiplying by? How are they getting from 8 to 32? What's their, excuse me, their constant ratio? That is 4. Now to find that, we take 32 divided by 8. So you take any y value, so in our case it was 32, and you divide by the previous y value, which is 8, and that's where we get 4. Now looking at this graph, I can see that it's a growth. So since I know it's a growth, then I also know that our B value should be greater than 1. So look at your B value here. Is it greater than 1? That's what we're looking for. So when we write our equation, the equation is y equals, our A value is the y-intercept, so that's 8. B value is 4 to the power of x. Okay, let's go on to question B, or graph B. So graph B, first off, the y-intercept is 0.8, -8. The next point, look at -1 and look at +1. And I have 1, -2. Okay, so how do they get from -8 to -2? To find that, we're going to take the second y value, divide it by the previous y value. So any y value divided by the previous y value, negative divided by a negative is a positive, so that's 1/4, or you could write it as 0.25. So then we have this one here is a decay because from left to right, it's getting closer and closer to 0. Okay, where y equals 0. So that one is a decay. So our B value should be between 0 and 1. So when we write our equation, make sure that the B value is between 0 and 1. Our A value is -8. That's our y-intercept. b is 1/4 or 0.25, either one will work, to the power of x. Okay? All right, let's go over our last one for this video. This is example C. On this one, first, find the y-intercept. The y-intercept is 0, +8. Now look at -1 or +1 and find the next point. So I have 1, 2. Find how they got from 8 to 2. What's the common ratio? So 2 divided by 8 is 0.25 or also 1/4. So then our equation is y equals the y-intercept, 8, times our b value, 0.25, to the power of x. All right, in our next video, we will go over the last 3 tasks or ideas that we had.